Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Books and Betches, not to be confused with Books and
Sure.
Oh.
We're gonna know why later.
I'm Kristen, and with me I have
Erica and Maria.
This is gonna be a really good episode.
I'm
First
so
and
pumped.
foremost, this is a triple S podcast.
Yes.
We swear, we spoil, and we talk about sex.
Yup.
Erica's gonna do her best not to spoil things.
I've already yelled at Erica to not spoil the next books in this series
like
for me.
book
'Cause I will
two,
get
we're talking
so
about.
pissed.
You cannot spoil book 2 because
Can't spoil nothing.
Maria's only read book 1. And
Exactly.
You cannot spoil book 2.
Don't say nothing.
Okay.
Shh.
All right.
Okay.
Quiet.
All right. So,
Okay.
what are we doing, Erica?
What do you mean?
Today, what are we doing?
Oh my God, you had one job. You had one job. Introduce our guest.
I literally cannot.
Okay. So we are talking about Savage Lands today. And first and foremost, I'm obsessed with this book, this series. You've heard me talk about it on the stories. A bunch of you guys have read it because I've talked about it on the stories, which is the freaking coolest thing ever. My favorite thing in the world is when I recommend a book on the story, and then I go to my Goodreads, and then there's like a bunch of people just putting it on their TBRs, and I'm like, that is awesome. But a bunch of people have messaged me, and today we have the author, the brains behind the one of my favorite book series that I've read in 2021, Stacey Marie Brown.
Hi.
Thank you so much for doing this. This is going to be incredible.
So we are
I'm so pumped.
gonna chit chat about Savage Lands book 1 mostly, but she just released.
Only book 1.
Well, she
with
just
story.
released Badlands, which is the 4th book in the.
Stacey, I just want you to know that Erica has this thing where she gets ahead of herself and she will just spoil stuff for me without giving me any warning. So I'm just trying to stop any spoilers from the next book because I really want to pick them up. So
I'm also 2 books ahead of her, so if I spoil everything, I'll be like, "Oh, right, you guys aren't there yet." Sorry.
Okay, so we're gonna hop right into it. We have to do the 60 seconds.
yes,
Yeah.
you do. You try to
Okay.
get out of it.
So, like we said, this is the first book in a series. We're talking about Savage Lands right now.
let's talk about the genre.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about, genre.
Is this urban fantasy?
Yeah, Stacey, what do you think? What would you quantify your book as?
I never fit in boxes, and that's my problem. Is I would call it more urban fantasy, and a lot of people want to label it dystopian. But I think people in your mind, dystopian brings up more sci-fi, like more futuristic. Where I think it's wild west of, like I think it has more of a, like they've gone backwards. So I think it's like a urban fantasy that we're in modern times, but where they are has gone backwards. So they're in this like, wild west feel of Budapest.
When I've described it, I've said like it's 5 years in the future. Like, is that what you pictured?
Well, I mean, because it connects to my other series. So technically it's like 20 years from when I left off from that series.
Okay.
But, like it to me is now the current time. Like, it it's whatever you want it to be. But it's just, I made it 20 years ahead of the other world. Like I stopped.
Okay.
Which world was that? Which series?
So
is
that was
from?
Darkness, Collector, and Lightness. They're all linked together.
they are
They're all
linked.
kind of one. So all that stuff that Brexley is going through is resulted from that same world, but 20 years earlier.
Erica, you got to get on that.
I have every intention of reading all of the rest of your. If you want to, you can send me your grocery list and I'll read that too. But
I'll send you. Very boring. It has dog food. And
so I'm fully prepared to dive into like all the books that she's written. So that's where I'm
for
at.
this book, so basically, Erica's going to do the 60 seconds, and I think it's going to be really funny having you here.
Oh my God.
And so if you're new to this,
pressure.
if you're new to this podcast, basically we try to explain the plot summary of a book in 60 seconds or less.
The entire plot of the entire book
It's very hard to do,
in
Okay.
60 seconds.
and I'm
Okay.
excited for Erica to do it.
I can't wait for Erica to fudge
Stacey, you
it.
ready for this?
yeah, bring it.
All right, here we go, Erica. In 3, 2.
Okay, so we start off. Oh my God.
You got it.
this
You
is
got
the
it. You
worst.
got it.
We have our main character, Brexley, and she's badass. And she is on one side of this wall in Budapest. It's kind of like how it used to be in Budapest, where it was split in like different areas, and there's a wall that needs to come down.
Dude, you have
So
Chapter 1.
she finds pills because she's like trying to fuck over her like family that's like not really her family, and then she gets caught. She goes to prison on the other side of the wall, and they torture her and beat her up, and then she finds this other dude that's super hot, and
I gotta get that in there.
Where am I at? Am I almost
15
done?
seconds.
And then
Come on, Erica.
and then she like basically enters in on like a battle royale, and not by choice, and then she
5
gets
seconds.
broken out of the prison by the hot dude, and then
All right, time's up.
he blows
lot
up
of
some
shit
stuff.
happens.
That was
And then a
really
bunch of shit
bad.
happens.
That was really, really bad.
It
Well,
wasn't
shit
good.
happens.
You didn't even mention like fairy versus. Did you? You just said there's a wall.
All right, I didn't do well.
Okay.
Which I think you were thinking about the Berlin Wall.
No, Buddha and
Did
Pesh.
Budapest had a wall?
It didn't have a wall, but it was very divided.
Oh, I didn't know. I'm very bad at
And
history.
people don't realize that one side's Buddha, one side's Pest. That's where Budapest,
Yeah.
they linked it together, but actually they're two different
I'm gonna
words.
call my high school history teacher and I'm gonna tell them they messed up.
So I believe in like World War II and stuff. Like there was problems in Budapest.
Did you do like a lot of research for this then, or was this like knowledge that you had going into writing this book?
A little of both. I'm a travel is my other passion. And I've been lucky enough to live and travel abroad to so many places. And I've been to Budapest. And I just immediately, when I went there, and I was already like, had this idea kind of in my head, I wanted to be like, oh, what happened? Because when we leave off of the end of like all, I tie all the books together in the Ember, the last final book in the Lightness series. And it kind of leaves off with this, that the Eastern Bloc is pulling away. From they don't want to be under the Sealy or the king and queen there, and so they're pulling away. And I'm like, what would happen if and so when I was in Budapest, and I was in Prague before that, and I was like, it was beautiful and I loved it. I'm like, oh, this could work. But then when I went to Budapest, it was just like everything seemed to just fit exactly how I was like, oh, and then this could go there, and then this is where the humans would be, and then this would be Savage Land, and then this would be where the Fae, the side of the Fae where the palace is, and so it just, and so, yeah, I mean, I always make sure I do my research, but, and I leave it, of course, a fantasy that, you can bend things a little bit,
Yes.
you don't have to be perfectly on.
I just love that you actually go, like you travel.
Yeah, it's so fun.
There's so many books that you read that are based in certain places and you're like, they have no idea what's going on at that place. Like you can't, and it's hard to put yourself as a reader into a place if they're saying things that you're just like, I know for a fact that doesn't happen there.
That bend of
Yeah.
the fantasy is hard to get away from it if you don't like at least have something based in truth.
Yeah.
Well,
I
like
love that you
for
go
me,
there.
like Budapest, like having this in this location, I was like, this makes perfect sense. So like that resonated with me because I was like, yeah, this is a city divided naturally.
I didn't know that going in, right? My history teacher
it's
sucked.
technically two cities, I think.
But I like that it was set in a place that's not your norm. Normally, it's either some kind of like
London,
New York, big U.S. sort of city, or like that, or just a full-on new world. I like that we had a mix of both.
Yeah. My biggest question on this, and this is kind of just me being selfish, how did you do the Hungarian in there? Like, did you have a Hungarian person tell you like how to say some of these things, or are you just like
Research.
Googling?
I made sure like Google, but going through and rechecking that, because there's a lot of places on Google it'd be like, and so I would go into sites where there were actually people that were like, no, this is, they were actually Hungarian and going, no, this is our swear words. This is how it,
Nice.
because there's a lot of things you can Google and then it would say something, but, probably there they'd be like, oh, that's not what it really means, so I just wanted to make sure like, and plus, I did make it that the Western world had absorbed, they kind of lost a little of their culture so that, I could naturally have like them speaking English and stuff like that. But then there's still parts, of course, that are embedded in them of Hungarian. So they'd have the food, they'd have, like when they got upset or something, it would be that natural, like, if you have a parent or somebody that's, from another country, when they get upset, they probably naturally slip into like their own back and like, swear.
Yeah,
at
I
it, or,
liked when Brexley would just throw out a Hungarian curse word.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's fun. You
it was
pissed.
very authentic.
I also want to say, like, I appreciate your use of food in this.
We talk about
I
this.
have this thing against like fantasy books or just these kind of adventure books in general where our main character rarely eats and apparently it's okay. They don't actually, they're fine. I love that because we were also in the prison system here with Brexley, the fact that she didn't eat and how it affected her body and how she felt
It was a
going
part of
into
it.
all the things she had to deal with, because outside of the prison, she's so strong, she's so badass. So seeing her being debilitated by such a human issue, or it's like, you just need to be fed to be strong. I thought that was so cool.
I kind of agree with you. I've read so many books where it's just like they just go and go and go and like
they don't stop to pee. Yeah, I really appreciated that.
I have a very I lived in LA for 9 years, and probably many people have heard the story. So I have a very directing, acting. I wanted to interior design, so I wanted to do set design. So I have a very layered. Like I like none of my characters are going to be one dimensional unless they're just throwaway. Like. They come in and I'm like, I like everything real. Like if she doesn't eat, you become emaciated. You become, it isn't just like, oh, I'm not hungry. Like to them, it was just like, I mean, they were licking things off the floor just to get extra calories, Wow. And to me, that is so real of what would happen,
Yes.
So I always have to have realism within my fantasy, like that you feel it yourself. Cause like, oh my God, if you didn't eat for days, or if you're pooping in front of, thousands of people and you've come from a very posh, this would be like, whoa.
I tried to put myself in her shoes of like when she first gets put into the prison system and she's thrown for their first bathroom. All the toilets are just open. In a line, open. There's no stalls.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's Kristen's nightmare.
That is literally my nightmare. I have dreams about that.
So all the showers, no curtains, nothing, just a wall of showers, a wall of toilets.
We have all these moral standards as humans. And it's funny when you start taking them away, you start peeling them back, how basic, all that fluff that we'd be like, I'd never do that. Oh yeah, you would. Fuck yeah, you would.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I put myself in her shoes and I was like, I would definitely shit in front of everybody. I would.
After a while,
I'd have
you
to.
just be like, screw it. Who cares? Like you lose that, all that fluff. That's security. That's, that's just that life that we're that plush, where if you don't have that, and there's a lot of countries that right now are going through they don't have that understanding of being. So oh, I need my private stall and my little plushy toilet paper, they're
my bidet.
You get this is basic, and how fast you go from ew to I don't, I'm just trying to survive.
I can't even, I have some sort of psychological disorder. I can't pee in a stall if somebody is in the stall. And I have an actual anxiety disorder around very pee shy. I forget the name of it. It's an actual problem.
I'm sure it is.
So I'm curious how I would do in that situation.
You would be done.
Well, you would either die.
There is in her cell, there is a hole where it's for her to relieve herself and stuff. So I would see you just doing it in the stall, in the cell.
I'd be like, I'll take the hole.
So one thing I did want to touch on, and we actually talked about this in a previous podcast episode that we just did I don't know, 2 hours earlier, is I feel like you did a really good job of touching on the racial stuff.
Yeah.
We've seen books where the main character is racist or whatever racism looks like in the Fae world, but they're racist against other types of mythical creatures.
Yeah.
And I feel like Brexley was racist coming into the prison, but then very quickly she kind of realized that she was wrong and then corrected herself.
Yeah.
Anybody really paying attention will find a lot of political issues that are tied in my book that probably are going on in our real world that I'll just cover up with Fae and human instead, that are very true in to people and humanity. I think I like humanity and that stuff and faults and, you learning and figuring it out. And, but I use a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And touching on humanity, I really do feel like you gave Brexley a full-fledged character. She felt full-fledged to me.
She had faults.
She had faults, but also she wasn't God modded.
Yeah.
Right. So we see her in the beginning while she's in her training where she is in the academy, I guess it is. In there, she's a badass. She's kicking ass and she's taking names basically, and she's a force to be reckoned with. And then you see her get put in the prison, and fear gets her. She's like, I was taught one way and that way was wrong. I was not prepared like I thought I was to deal with what I'm dealing with right now. And I loved that I got to see her fear.
Yeah.
And not see her be like, well, I'm going to get through this. I'm strong enough to handle it. It's you can't. This is literally the worst place you could be.
Prison broke her.
It's humanizing.
Well, and you see the fault of somebody that can take that and learn from it and go, holy crap, what they did not train us for what really, I was a badass there, but I'm, I'm on the lowest pin here.
Yeah.
But then there's another character that ends up coming in that he's the opposite. So it shows the counter of how, if you are so, she was willing to bend and be like, holy crap, I got to learn. And, fight and survive. And that's, losing some of those things that you thought were so core to you. And then there's another person that comes in later that he doesn't. And what happens to him because, he's so like, I'm this hot stuff, and you're like, oh, buddy.
You adapt or you die.
Didn't do well.
You adapt or die, and that's how it is.
I will say, Stacey, you have a very interesting Instagram account. I do love.
I've been looking at you scrolling, and I'm like, what are you scrolling right now?
I've been scrolling. I've been zooming. I've been enjoying. There are a lot of sexy men on your Instagram account.
Yeah, they love my Manhunt Mondays, and sometimes I'll have a Hump Day Wednesday that has somebody's nice firm behind.
That's basically what I've been looking at.
I love Manhunt Mondays. Ooh.
Yeah,
nice
Mondays,
that's a perky butt.
So yeah, that was definitely built into some of the books. I do want to touch on Opie and Bitsy because they fucking kill me.
I love them. They're so cute. So Chirp at the beginning of the episode.
Yes.
Bitsy only chirps.
Only chirps.
What do you mean by chirps? Like,
well, it's
the word chirp is written out, but it like sometimes it's like drawn out with like multiple R's or like eyes.
Yeah. She's an imp, so she doesn't actually speak. So she'll make little like bird like chirp, like she makes little noises, and
she just flips off Brexy at every chance she gets.
Her tone.
Oh, I love that.
She flips everybody off.
How did you come up with those two characters? Because they're clearly the comic relief in this series.
This is kind of I'm like, I gotta not do it one time because it's starting to be like my formula. Because like you look at all my past series, I have like a drunk pixie and one that can't fly, and I have a sprite monkey and another sprig that's most people's favorites. And so they kind of came, and I was like going through it. I'm like, no, I shouldn't do this, but I just felt that there needed to be some humor. There was so much darkness, and there's so much like guttingness of what Brex was going through that I'm like, I just felt like they just needed something to balance her. And I was like, okay, what would be in a prison? What would be in prison? And so I was like, well, Brownie, because they clean. But I'm like, but what if I take it that he doesn't like to clean, or
I love it. I love it.
And like, because brownies are very like, they're supposed to be like these kind of grumpy, and I'm like, what if he's kind of like, loves flamboyant design and like, and stuff. And then I had done one time I brought in an imp in one of my previous books, and it was just so fast. I'm like, and I just had this idea. I don't know. Again, people always ask me, and I'm like, they just come themselves, they're like, we want to be in this. And then just how she, and I was looking at this one creature that has like 3-pronged fingers, and I'm like, that would be so funny if every time like, that was her way of communicating, which is like,
I also just love how Opie and Bitsy converse together. Where it's like
it was a misunderstanding.
Or like when let's say Opie's asking Brexley about his outfit, and Brexley's like, yeah, I like it, and then Bitsy would say something, and he's like, no, she said it this way. She meant it this way. No, that's not what she said. And obviously, we're just hearing chirps.
You're just seeing chirp.
So we're just seeing chirps, but Opie's having a conversation back, and it's like, that's fucking hilarious.
And by the time you get to the fourth book, like Warwick,
Erica?
who like Warwick who absolutely does not buy into all of this. He's communicating with them. He's like, how the fuck am I like talking to this thing right now?
Like all of a sudden, because sub-Fae, I have, again, creating this world of Fae that I already established, and I wanted to stay in Fae, so I was like, okay, I can't start a new world, so that's why they're always all kind of going to be linked. But, like I have that a lot of these brownies and imps and stuff like that are considered sub-Fae. So because they're like little creatures, pets, they'd be rats to us or something like that, so to him, he still has that, again, like old idea of like, these things are nuisances. But by the end, like grumpy as he is, he slowly, they start becoming, and the book I'm reading now, they're even more bothering him. So.
I love that.
But he like leans on, I mean, he eventually leans on them in future books, like for certain things. And he like, they're definitely part of his like little
I'm just waiting
unit.
for her to say something else that's just gonna spoil. Stop.
Stop. But it's like that dad that's like, we're not having a cat, we're not having a dog.
Yes, a cat loves a cat.
Get him curled up with him. That's exactly what like Warwick.
That's exactly what I thought of. I have to ask this question because it is something I've always wondered with people who write these just books in general that have sex scenes. Does your family read them, and how do you like write them? If your family does read them and you're just like, I'm just going to write exactly what I want to write. It doesn't matter.
Well, my dad and brother have not read. They that's not their thing, and they would never. And I'd prefer if they actually didn't. But my mom is actually my first line editor. My first line. I mean, she doesn't edit my books, but she'll go through them and be like, because she used to be an English teacher, so she at least
That's nice.
I'm an awful speller. I'm an awful I just write the ideas. I just get through and stuff like that. And she'd be like, I don't think you meant this word. I'm like, oh. You're making up words. So so she reads. We've always been really close, as friends, and she was a counselor, so she's always made it more of okay, let's talk about this. But we had no lines, in the sense of there's times that when I'm pushing the market, and there's going to be one later that I'm like, Mom, this is coming up, just warning. And she's like, do you want
give her forewarning.
You want me to skip over? I'm like, have you ever skipped over? And she's like, no. So it's kind of, I think the first time was my blushing, oh God, my mother's reading this, but we're past that now. I mean, I have so many books that Sex has pretty much been through them all, so I'm like, I think she's just read them.
What a cool mom.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, she's actually the one that will help me when I'm writer's block and stuff like that. Cause she's more analytical. So she's like, okay, how does that happen? And, and sometimes her just being there, I'll be like, oh, and then, oh, and she's like, okay, go girl.
One question I had, what's the best money that you could put into your book? So I've read online, there's all different types of, editors and XYZ, and you talked about your mom being kind of more of a line editor for you. Would you rather put, $1,000, $2,000 into a line edit, or a more of a story edit? Or would you say cover art, or marketing,
a
sensitivity editor?
Yeah.
I couldn't pick one, because to me, this is my brand. This is who I am. This is what I'm trying to sell. I want to have the best product out there. And when I say it to my mom, I'm like, you don't realize I also have 3 more editors.
Right.
And I used to have a developmental editor, and I'll probably go back to her when I start a new series again, so she can be because there's a lot of times, because I don't write anything down. I don't have any boards. I don't have anything like that. So there's sometimes that should be this, but we don't yet. And I'll be right. So I can't pick, because like I said, if I was a better speller or something like that, but I think they're all very important. And I think covers are what really sell a book at the end of the day. There's many times somebody will be like, no, I want to read that one. I'm like, that's third in this, that's the third series. You have to start over there. And they're like, but I want that, there's just, so I can't pick, because I think they all, formulate one package.
Your cover doesn't have people on it.
I love your cover.
Yeah.
That's that. For a long time, people were kind of saying, bear child, even for paranormal, and all of a sudden I was just like, no, I don't want people. And then all of a sudden now it seems to be the rage of, you look around and most paranormal now are not having cover, people on them.
Mm-hmm. I just think it looks a little, I don't want to say classier, but it just looks more sophisticated, and
I do. I love how all of your covers for all of your series have a sort of they all kind of fit together in a way, and I think that's really cool too. It's very aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm getting for Darkness and Collectors, I'm getting them recovered, and they are going to have people on them, because I wanted them to match the Lightness saga, because those are I wanted them to all look cohesive together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think they're from now on, I'm in the mood of not having people on covers. I think it also, it's hard to find the exact look you want, and and I kind of
there's a fine line between epic and cheesy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to these current kind of books.
I will say I'm obsessed with the 90s looking covers.
I don't know why.
With I don't know if you've read any of Jeannie Frost, but she From the Grave and those books, it's just super Buffy the Vampire Slayer type
Buffy,
90s.
I don't like Buffy covers.
But they just look so 90s.
Well, FYI, I was on Buffy 26 times.
You were on Buffy?
Yep, and Scream. Yeah.
Wait,
I used to do an act. I was acting for a long time.
This is great, because we're all in the film
TV.
industry.
Well, we were. Erica was.
Yeah, we work in TV.
Again, things have changed when I was there, but yeah, I was on.
Stop! Buffy's one of my all-time favorite TV shows.
Too.
Oh.
Yeah.
What was your character?
Oh, it was an extra, I did little bit parts and extras, but I was on there. It became almost like a regular extra. I was.
That's so fun.
That is really cool. I love
my
that.
God.
I'm so jelly.
I loved Buffy.
I loved Buffy.
What do you think, I just brought up Jeannie Frost. She's one of my other favorite authors. Like, do you have a favorite author or somebody you like take inspo from, or do you like read all of their books? Like, I read people's grocery lists.
Like, sometimes like I'll just have enough of paranormal and I'll have to like read contemporary, just like, I read everything. I feel like I'm like, is it my personality? I don't have favorites of anything. I don't have a favorite food. I don't have a favorite color. I'm a mood person. Like, I just like what, like, ooh, when it gets Halloweeny, I'm like, ooh, I want something a little more dark, or, like, or when it's like, so I don't have favorites. I can say the one series that probably started darkness, and where it was Karen Marie Moning's series was probably my inspiration of Barnes, and like of getting, like, I love the Fae. That's probably what inspired me to get into the Fae world and stuff like that. So I love her, like, but no, other than that, I can't, like, I just don't do favorites of anything. I'm like, I like variety. I like taste, like whatever my mood is that moment,
Do you read a lot of like paranormal and fantasy, like romances, or do you read like contemporary
that was
ones?
my first like bread and butter. I mean, I'm a Goonies Labyrinth kid,
Labyrinth, the nostalgia.
So that's like, I mean, that will always be my first, love. But sometimes I do need a break when you're writing it and reading it, so I'm like, oh, I just need something like a little lighter, that there's not things that like every magical power and, but I will always, I think my core being, it will always be paranormal, so I read it, I write it.
Do you have any books that are like half finished or like permanently tabled that you're like, I'll get to that eventually?
I don't. My first book ever written, Darkness to Light, is like still one of like some people's it's just, I have that crazy where I know other people that are like, oh my God, I have so many half finished things. I'm like, I don't bother if they're like, I'll get an idea and I'm like, but if I don't sit down and like they like characters start talking in my head back and forth and I'm building a scene, like that's how my first contemporary started, that I was just like, one night all of a sudden I'm like, the scene came out of nowhere and I'm like, oh my God, I want to write that, and then I'll go like, I'm like, this is going to become something like there, I have an idea for contemporary for like 3 years now, but it keeps getting put on the back burner. I haven't started anything, but no, my first, like at all of trying, like, I mean, I look back at stories in my head hidden of like, my teen years. I didn't realize actually how much I wrote, like I always was making stories, but like when I was actually in this, no, there's nothing right now that I have that it's like tabled,
Wow,
like
cool.
It's just weird.
That's
I know.
awesome.
I'm a freak because most people are like, oh my God, I have so many scripts under my bed. I'm like, I feel like this thing chose me.
I have the
biggest
last
question.
Yeah,
the biggest one.
Buckle
Okay,
up.
this is big. Ready?
I don't want to get into politics, but we do have to ask. We feel like there's a conspiracy theory, and we haven't been able to get a hold of anybody about it, and we feel like maybe you might be able to answer this. But why is I released a breath I didn't know I was holding in every book? Did you guys, like, all the writers like get together and decide that to like put that in every book?
Yes.
I knew it. That's it. It's the Illuminati.
Yes. Oh yeah. Now if I disappear off, they're gonna come find me now.
No, but like really, I will say I liked your versions.
Yeah,
we do talk about it.
We started getting everybody sending us like a type of way people release breaths that they didn't know they were holding, and we were like rating which ones were like the top. And I think it's very funny how different like people can make it, but it's a thing, right? You're in a moment and you don't realize you're like holding your breath and then you let it go. It's such a common thing that people go.
Happens all like it's in every book.
Yeah, you gotta. It's in your book, Erica.
Well, she did it because she wanted to be part of the club.
Yeah. Well, now we know there's a club.
There's so many things that when you're first going into writing, thinking like, I'm never going to do this. Oh, fuck, I did that. Oh my God. But now I'm going to be so in tune to that. I'm like, Erica, you're I'm going to be like, she never can breathe again.
If anything, now you have to think of like just more creative, weird ways of saying it.
Or to shorted of breath. She didn't know he had it.
I love that.
But we've said it so much that people like literally
They
like
send it
lose
to
their
us.
minds about it
Yeah.
now, and they like we get like I'm not even
Hundreds.
joking, we get hundreds of DMs a week about I released a breath I didn't know I was
Yeah.
holding in random books.
Once you see something in it, you're like, then it becomes like a tick that you're like, "Ah!"
Is there a phrase aside from holding the breath thing? Is there one that you seem to always gravitate towards that you add in your books?
Oh, I'm sure plenty. Because I got so into like trying to get like the movement. So I'll probably have them like rub their face or, like something like that. Like, that when, especially because my characters always seem to be frustrated, sexually just frustrated, that, because you do a lot of like, you'll pinch your head or like, so I probably do that kind of stuff a lot,
Yeah, I can see that. I felt like when I was reading your book, it felt like a movie.
Yeah.
That's how because of my background, like
Right.
I see everything as I'm writing it as a movie, like even camera angles and lighting and like how things would like go. So I write it like I'm ready for it to go to screen.
That's why your action scenes are so good.
Yeah.
So Badlands just came out, which is amazing.
It is book 4?
Book four of 6, right?
Yes.
What a world.
Okay, cool.
It's cool how you could just like decide, like you're like, there's going to be 6 of these. I feel like I would start writing and then be like, oh my God, no, there's going to be 3 of these. This is too
Well,
much.
I don't go in with any idea because it was probably more of like, oh, if there's 2 or 3, great, but they just, I struggled when I first started this because my other series in that same world was so popular. I was like, oh God, are people going to come back going, oh, it's just not as good, I just was ready for like, so I kind of crippled myself for a long time and I kept, trying to write it and finally, like when they started flowing, it was like, now they don't freaking shut up.
I'm so excited. I'm like on the edge of my seat waiting for it's Bloodlands, right? Is the next one.
And Bloodlands was supposed to be the final one, but then, and again, twice 2 books came from this series that I was just going back to edit. And one line a character said made me go, that's interesting. When did that happen?
Neat.
So
That's
twice
neat.
there was 2 different characters. One was Killian and one was like, that they said something that I was like, what if I did that?
This whole conversation has just made me that much more excited to get into your books. So like we are so appreciative and we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Cause
Yeah, seriously.
I'm so pumped. Like the end of Savage Lands, like literally last night I was sitting there like, stop it. You did not.
I did,
I was
and it gets
up.
worse.
I love it. Erica made a whole YouTube video about how much she loves your series. So I think like you've literally made our days here. So thank you so much for sitting down.
Thank you guys
talking
for
to us.
having me. It's fun.
Absolutely. You can come back anytime.
Come back for Bloodlands.
We're definitely gonna have to have you back.
We'll be on your PR tour for Bloodlands. It's
Yeah, if you want us. I don't know if you want us, but we'll have it.
Absolutely. Are you kidding? Of course I do. I'm there.
So where can everybody find you? Instagram, the whole 9. I know you have a website.
I have, if on my website, www.staceymarie.com is basically like you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I have.
Oh, you on the
group.
TikToks? I can't do
I'm
TikToks.
on
she's
the
on TikTok.
What? That's
for
awesome.
you.
I don't do them well, but I'm there.
Do you post like your travel stuff somewhere that I can follow you? Because I love hiking and traveling, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what else you're doing.
Once I get back out to doing it, yes, I've been very housebound. But then and I have also the private, I have a Savage Lands chat group, and I have my own squad page on Facebook too. So
Perfect.
join us.
Awesome. And we will link all of that. So we also put this on YouTube. So just check out the description. We'll have links to everything that you could possibly need to find Stacey and her amazing work. Again, thank you, Stacey. We appreciate you a lot. If you want to go ahead and follow us on Instagram, that's books_n_Betches, BETCHES. We're on YouTube. Just look us up and subscribe to our channel. Like and share and comment.
Rate our podcast.
Rate our podcast
It
wherever
helps us
you
a
listen
ton.
to podcasts. Check us out on Patreon.
On Discord, on all the things.
And we will see you all in the next one. Thank you so much for being here. We love you. We appreciate you, and have a wonderful day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Bye.